call our meeting to order. Betsy, would you please call the roll?
I know that all board members are in attendance this evening with the exception of Lisa Weitzel.
Thank you. Got any motion to approve our agenda this evening?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Brandon. Betsy?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Action items coming from closed session. We have the closed session minutes from August 25th and September 29th as presented or amended in closed session. Any comments on those? All right, so the recommended action to approve the closed session minutes from August 25th and September 29th.
Make that motion.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jim. Betsy?
Yep. Cobb?
Yes.
Maddox?
Yes.
Nucis?
Yes.
Worley?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Petermeyer?
Yes. 5.1, communications. Good news, recognition of the GMS boys cross country team state championship and the state placers. Congratulations, boys.
So Mr.
So-
Green
Yes.
will introduce.
Yes, and so we have our ISA state champion boys cross-country team, and then we had two female runners that also medaled in the top 25? Yep. In the top 25 at the state meet a couple weekends ago. Introduce Ryan Staley, he's our head cross-country coach. He'll talk a little bit about the season and introduce our runners for you.
Well, starting with I'll try to be brief, although it's usually not my thing. The boys, I used the phrase with them all year. I said they were consistently really good, and that's exactly what they were from the very first day all the way through the end. The first day I knew going in that we had a lot of returners from last year's team that took third with a lot of 7th grade boys, so I knew coming back as 8th graders we had a chance. And from the very first day, running the mile on the track and the times that I saw compared to years past, I knew we had a really good shot. And all year we really stressed that we weren't going to get outworked. We were going to outwork every single team in the state. We wanted to mix our talent with our work ethic. And at the end of the year I thought we'd be happy. They had 15 meets throughout the year and they went 15-0. They never lost one meet in terms of dual, triangular, or an invite. We have a really tough schedule, go a lot of really good invites. So about halfway through the year, he started to wonder what's up north and what we'd have to see possibly at the state meet if we get there and have a good shot. And we did our homework a little bit and thought we knew, but when we got to the state meet, we knew more than anything else that the only team that could beat us was ourselves. And they had a great attitude all year, and I've had a lot of good boys teams over the year, but I can honestly say no team has ever worked as hard as this group. I've had some talented teams, but in terms of work ethic and really just flat out wanting it more than everybody else, this team's as good as it gets. So I'm very, very proud of the season that they had, and of course the accomplishment at the end of winning a state championship. It doesn't get much better than that. On the girls' side of it, we had two girls right here, one being a 7th grader in Kendra Presky, and another an 8th grader in Katie Curry. Katie Curry that were top 25. If you're top 25 in the state with as many runners that there are at that meet, then you're pretty good. And those two had a great season, and for them to cap it off with 2 medals that they can wear proudly around their neck. As a coach, I know that I was very honored that they were able to accomplish that, and I know they should be very proud of their efforts. So all in all, it was a great day on both the girls and boys sides, and I was so happy that everybody was able to take home medals and of course the trophy on the boys side. With that being said, I'll give you their names and their certificates. Ethan Alexander, 6th grader. Grant Edwards, 8th grade. Dathan Mayton, an 8th grader. Dre Mayton, his brother. Caleb Mueller, another 8th grader. Rupert Peterson, another 8th grader. Katie Troutbetter, 8th grader. Not a lot of 8th graders. Maybe rebuilding year, maybe next year. We're going to see. This kid, Graham Turk, 7th grader. This young man here is one of the better 6th graders I've ever seen in a lot of years. Cameron Smith. These last two, I'm going to try to get in this before I'm done. These last two runners are 2 8th graders that were phenomenal these last 2 years, and you'd like to say it's okay to recruit your own kids, and that's exactly what I did with these two. The first one, I was told, hey, you need this one out. You know, he's one of the better runners in 6th grade, and so first hour study hall I happened to have him last year, and I read his name. I said, I heard I got to get you up to cross country. So I said, he goes, well, I play soccer. I said, I can work around it. Anyways, I talked to your parents, come back, and he comes back the next day and says, you know what, my parents think it'll work out, and the rest is history. He was on our team last year with 3rd in state, and an all-state runner this year, Nico Scott. This last one, once again, recruiting your own kids. I knew coaching 6th grade boys basketball 2 years ago that I was going to have this young man on my team, and cross-country season had started. Anyways, I happened to see him in the hallway as I'm at GIS, and I see his name on the back. And I said, Van Alstyne, how come you're not out for cross-country? And he kind of caught him off guard, and he said, well, I don't know. I said, well, I think if you're going to play basketball for him, you need to be in good shape. I think you need to get on the cross-country course. So about a day later, he was there, and 6th grade year, I think he just kind of played with it a little bit. Last year, he came ready to work. This year, I can honestly say, and I said it to Joe Pritchett the other day, I've coached a lot of good boys runners over the years. But I can tell you right now, the best one I've ever coached is sitting right there. Will Van Alstyne. Two very impressive young ladies, one which will be coming back next year and looking for big things. She'll be hopefully our #1 runner and a top 5 state placer, Kendra Presky. This 8th grade young lady was once again consistently really good all year, and I was so proud of her that at the end of the year she was able to win a sectional and then of course get herself in the top 10 in the state meet. Katarina Curry. That's all I've got. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
As a mom, I don't usually do this, but as a mom, I'll speak for the parents in the back of the room about how our coaches, Mark Kuhn and Sue Zartler are here too, and Ryan Staley, how they treat every child as if they're the top, and they really care about each one of our kids. And I think it's really neat to see what a program brings to the table with a cross-country program. And we have 3 of the most incredible coaches sitting, here that really take, at the middle school level, it's really hard to, as a parent to push your child to do their very best, and that's exactly what they do every day. And I wish every kid, every student in our district could run for you, because it's a really cool experience to see them cheer on the first and the last, just, cheer on all in between. And I know I've got a couple moms back here who are shaking their heads too, because they know how important that is, what you do for our kids. So it's all, they've built it, and it's pretty cool to see them bring home #1, because these 3 coaches are incredible. So thank you for all you do.
I didn't thank my 2 coaches right here, Mark Kuhn, Sue Zartler, and in case anybody did not know, they were my coaches back in junior high. That obviously means I'm really young and you're young too, so there you go. No, thank you.
You guys.
Congratulations, all.
Congrats.
Good job.
Thank you.
I expect you to run up here and start talking.
You can run out.
Yeah, I saw that.
You guys don't have to stay.
No.
Your mom's and dad's.
Yeah.
Great work, guys. Proud of you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I remember for the support. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Awesome job.
Thank you.
Coach, good job.
How are you? How are you? Sorry about that.
You're fine. I was Steve.
Thank you.
You can ask.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job. That's right. Gonna live up to next year.
Are you guys warm or are you okay? Okay, let me know. I'm a fan. Kids get out though. Not be so. You got the Mac. Thank you, parents, for bringing them.
That's right.
Thanks for bringing your kids in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving to agenda item 5.2, citizens' opportunity for visitors to address the school board concerning any agenda topic. Does anyone want to address? Thank you, Greg.
I was here last week, and we had some conversation about the AOS contract, okay? I'm in the process of FOIAing some of those documents and looking at them. I got to tell you, I've got some concerns about it as a taxpayer, okay? What I would ask you guys as a group is to really think about this Sentinel thing before you take care of the old business of finding out if there's some warranties or some things that weren't done by that old contract, because that's a lot of money that's on the table. So I just asked you to look into that.
Thank you, Greg. Any other visitors wish to address the board concerning any agenda topic? If not, moving on to consent agenda items.
Oh, yeah.
I printed out the, is there an extra agenda over there? The simple one? Yeah.
Okay.
I printed all 53 pages of it, so it's page after page after page. Has me out of sorts. Thank you. So, under 6 consent agenda items, item 6.1 through 6.10. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda items. Does anyone want to pull anything out of there or any discussion on anything? A motion from Jim, thank you. Jim, second. Brandon, thank you. Betsy, please call the roll.
Worley?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Pop?
Yes.
Maddox?
Yes.
Nuisance?
Yes.
Piermeyer?
Yes. 7, we've got 7 personnel consent items, 7.1 through 7.24 on the consent agenda. Anyone want to pull anything out of the personnel consent items? If not, I'll need a motion to approve 7.1 to 7.24 personnel consent items.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Susan. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brandon. Betsy?
Carter?
Yes.
Pop?
Yes.
Maddox?
Yes.
Nuisance? Worley?
Yes.
Piermeyer?
Yes. Agenda item 8, new business, 8.1, the fiscal year 14 audit presentation. Hi, Robin, welcome.
Thank you. You have in your possession this evening the copy of the audit report for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2014. And I'm going to give you some of the highlights of that. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. First off, your audit report includes an independent auditor's report, and I always like to mention that that report includes 2 opinions on the financial statements. One opinion states that the financial statements are fairly stated, with one exception, with the regulatory basis of accounting. And the second opinion states that the financial statements are not fairly presented, or it's an adverse opinion on the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And those are in there. Sometimes there's a little panic when we see adverse in there before we have the other opinion. The adverse opinion is required because the financial statements are prepared on the regulatory basis of accounting. They are available to the general public through the Freedom of Information Act. And if someone were to get your financial statements and read those and not be familiar with their basis of presentation, they might be confused about what they were seeing. So that's just kind of a warning in there to let you know that they are not presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The financial statements of the district, and I like to focus on, are just the operating funds. The operating funds, if you're reminded, are the educational fund, the operations and maintenance, transportation, and working cash. At the end of the year, the cash and investments in those funds totaled $7.87 million compared with $6.35 million the prior year. Fund balances had increased to $7.5 million compared to $6.3 million in the prior year. Receipts were level, which is consistent with what we're seeing with school districts in our client base. And your receipts saw a modest increase of about 1.5% between the 2 years. I know the district has been focused a lot on expenditures and reading your board minutes and looking at budgets and amended budgets. And expenditures did see a decrease in the operating funds of $2.1 million. So that is, you're going to see how you're going to reap the benefit just a little bit later in my presentation. Another thing that I look at in evaluating a school district is the operating expenses or the operating results of operations in those funds. And if you would look at the education fund, operations and maintenance, transportation, working cash, they all have positive results of operations for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2014. As a result of what I've just told you, the district's annual financial profile designation score is a 3.25 out of 4, which is considered a review designation. And that is up from the prior year, which was a 2.9 out of 4 when the district was in early warning status. And you've been in early warning status, I believe, for the last 2 years. So there has been an improvement. The next designation would be financial recognition. The increase in the profile score is a result of an increase in one of the weighted factors. There are 5 factors in the profile score. When you look at the profile score calculation included in your audits, the first 2 ratios in that score make up 70% of the score. The last 2 are 10% each. And the increase in the financial profile score is a result in the expenditures to revenue factor. So you're seeing a benefit there. Revenues are pretty much level, but because of the drop in expenditures in those funds, there was an increase in the score. Included in your audit, there are also findings. We look at internal control over financial reporting. What are the checks and balances that are in place to make sure that our numbers are correct? And we also look at compliance matters. Items that we noted were, we have comments regarding interfund loans. Whenever the district has a individual fund that shares a bank account with another fund and that goes negative, that creates an unauthorized interfund loan, that is in there. Misclassification of some debt service transactions. There's a lot of activity in debt service this year with the refunding and advance refunding bonds. And even though money does not necessarily flow through the district with those transactions, with the refunding bond, we just take that money and pay off existing debt, or with the advance refunding, the money from the bonds comes in and goes to an escrow agent, which will be held to pay those bonds. All of those transactions are required to be included in the district's financial statements. So those are some of the more material adjustments that we made. Made comments regarding payroll processing and classifying transactions in accordance with the Illinois Program Accounting Manual. And as a result of the entries we had to make for the debt service transactions, there was a substantial over expenditure of budget in the debt services fund. When we don't include those millions of dollars that are going to the escrow agent and for refunding, then we put them in there and they are not budgeted, that does create a pretty large over expenditure. So that is a result of some audit adjustments. We also recommend that there be independent reviews of the bank reconciliations. And I know staffing again is in transition, and I've talked with Nate a lot about just some controls that we see that would enhance the financial reporting process. Also included in your report, you'll find it's a loose letter. It's a communication that we are required to make with the Board of Education. And what that is why that's in there. It's called, the name of it is the SAS 114 communication. That is required because we are hired by the Board of Education. We're here working with the staff and superintendent, and we never have a chance really to interact with the board. And there is a requirement that we communicate with you findings of our audit, to tell you if we had any disagreements with management, what are some of the material adjustments that we made, and those are outlined in narrative form in that letter. Lastly, included in your audit report, there's a section, a federal compliance section. Whenever a unit of government expends more than $500,000 in federal funds, you're required to have a separate audit on those funds. It's called a single audit. And we look at compliance with the programs, your major programs, and we also look at internal controls over compliance. This year we tested as our major program your IDEA funds and also the school lunch program. We also are required to perform limited procedures on your other programs. And we did have a finding and a question cost related to the Title I program that I believe that Nate is already in the process of resolving. It's a reporting issue. I would like to say the audit went well this year. It's October. I was here last year in February. And I think it's been November, it's been January. We were able to get the information that we requested on a timely basis when we requested a report throughout the audit process, even though, like I said, it's been a time, again, of transition. We received that information and good explanations for the questions that we asked. So I'd like to definitely say thank you and to the staff, and I know we drive them crazy while we're here, but it went well, it went smoothly this year. Now, if you have questions, I know you try to get a draft report. We finished field work last week, and we got a draft of the report to you, I think Friday late. And just so you'd have a chance to look at it, maybe if you had other questions. I also know that I provided information for the Finance Committee meeting, so you would know what I was going to present tonight. I don't know if there's any questions that you have that I would be happy to address, or if you want me to come to a future Finance meeting, I would be happy to do that.
Well, I'd like to make a couple comments, one of which is I appreciate Nate's hard work, because I have been pretty interested in the conduct of the audits and the audit reports for several years. And I note the same thing, that having the audit report out in October and knowing some of the difficulties that have occurred in past years, it's a great feat, Nate. So thank you very much. And I know that took some digging on your part probably as well. I also think that the table that you provided to the Finance Committee meeting regarding recommendations and management response is very helpful. Did you provide that as part of this report?
That's actually a different format. What the report that the Finance Committee received was actually my working copy.
Right.
That I take. These are going to be my findings, and this is what they're going to be, what category they're going to fall in. And so all of that information is presented on individual pages on the schedule of findings and question costs.
Correct. It was. I understand, but I like the concise format. Then I have an accounting question to ask you, and I know that you're familiar with the Treasury reports because one of your management recommendations in the past audit, not the current audit, but the past audit, said that the Treasury reports obviously didn't reconcile.
That's this year. It's in there this year. So.
Oh, okay. Well, we were aware, I mean, that's a very true observation. But one of the questions that I need to ask is, you will see in the section on the cash investments of the Treasury reports, and I actually did go back several years, And I know that this existed in May of 2013, and I didn't catch it. And it also existed in June of 2014, August of 2014, and now currently. Can you explain a little bit how you audited and accounted for the negative balance of 1.68 million in the new construction Fund 61? I mean, that fund was reported as negative for several years. So how did you view that?
Well, back to the regulatory basis of accounting. There isn't a Fund 61. It is part of Fund 60.
Okay,
So it is just like you have Fund 11 that accompanies Fund 10. There's no provision in the Illinois Program Accounting Manual for a Fund 61 or a Fund 11. And several of my other districts may have separate transportation funds to track special education. That is an internal tool, if you will. And so when we look at that to audit, we have to combine the balance in 60 and 61 together because that is the only fund recognized by the State Board of Education.
Okay, so then my question is, if that is what's recognized, so when you prepared the audit, that's exactly what you did. You netted Fund 60 and 61. Okay, so by doing that, we're at about, I don't know, 900,000 or something. So that reconciles to the cash in the bank, correct? By netting those two.
By netting all the funds, a lot of the funds are commingled. So yeah, you have to take 10 and 11 and 20 and 30 and 40 and 50, 60, 61 and get to that bank balance. So if one fund actually goes negative, we don't have an overdraft at the bank. Because it is, and that's my comment on the unauthorized interfund loans.
Right.
We are actually borrowing from another fund to get there and creating an unauthorized, if you will, interfund loan between those two, with the fund that has money and the fund that doesn't.
So, but given the fact that we have Fund 60 and Fund 61, Fund 61 is an internal recording tool. So really, if we wanted to collapse Fund 61 into Fund 60, we could just do that, correct?
Yeah, and I don't know if there's, before you do that, just be careful that there's not tracking mechanisms set up in there for the different projects. I mean, like Phase 1 and Phase 2, that you keep the integrity of the information that fund was established to record. But yeah, as far as from an audit standpoint, they could be combined, as could 10 and 11. But I know we use 11 to help with grant reporting.
Okay, so, I mean, then it would be incumbent upon Nate to look at the activity to see what projects make up that Fund 61, correct? I mean,
if you still want to keep that information, if the projects are completed, I'm not sure that there's any reason to keep those, but if it's keeping track of ongoing projects, it's probably providing some useful information.
okay, so if this Fund 61 is not being used for current construction, there really isn't a need to have that continue to exist, correct?
I don't know of any reason. Nate, do you know of any reason?
I definitely know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask a question on that. So what you're saying is that you put everything that is contained in 61 is also contained in 60?
For
And basically,
presentation.
And basically what you're doing is you take that out, so if you've got a large project, as you said, our Phase 1 construction, and you want to track that, it still is part of 60, but we're putting it in 61 as just a check and balance to make sure that what goes in there and taking a look at budgets in that respect. Is that right?
That's what I think it's been used for. Like I said, it's very similar to your Fund 11.
I think we did the same thing for our funds back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
To keep them separate.
Do we know when the last activity in that fund has occurred? in 61?
Well, I can tell you, as of, well, some of the 61 is, you're going to have some activity, Rick, because of investment income. And it's not much, but then you also, it's declining.
Yeah, I mean project. There's no current project activity in that fund.
Correct.
I haven't seen us using that for a long
No.
time, so. This is part of the cleanup that we were asking Nate to do, to look at these fund balances and the negative fund balances, to find
Right.
out why they're negative, and let's get the adjustments, out there so that we're cleaner with, funds 10, 20, 30,
Yeah,
and
so, but
forth.
how I understand it from Robin is that basically this could be netted against one another. So we have about $900,000 in the cap fund of
Right.
60. So that will affect some of our conversation with PMA that's coming up. Do you see cap funds this low at 900,000 if we net this?
I mean, some districts don't have capital projects funds. I mean, it just
Okay.
depends on what they have going on. They are for the purpose of recording capital projects, so that you keep those costs of capital projects out of your operating funds, because if you don't, then it has impacts on financial profile score and other calculations.
Which is exactly what we saw happen with the building of Glenwood Elementary School, because we used education fund dollars for that, which showed a spike in our education spending, which lowered our score profile, because we used savings the board at that time decided to use our education fund balance to build that building instead of bond.
And they were paid out of the education fund versus being transferred to the capital projects fund.
Right.
Okay, so could you restate what you said just recently? And that is, by paying the Glenwood Elementary School funds directly out of the education fund, rather than having it go through the capital projects fund, is not in accordance with the Illinois Accounting Practices Manual. Is that true?
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I said that that's what it's designed for, is to
Okay.
get that over there. They give you that tool, if you will, to move the accounting for the capital projects over to that fund, because that allows you to not impact your score. But I have some districts that choose not to establish a capital projects fund.
Okay.
And if needed, we could have had a capital projects fund 62 also,
Yes.
and earmarked another specific project.
Sure.
Right, just for internal use, absolutely.
But all that reverts back to to item 60, or project, or the item, or what, Fund 60, right? No matter how many you put behind it,
Right.
it all
It's
reverts
still,
back. It
for
just-
financial reporting purposes, they all get put together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So now, current practices, we've got it all going into into 60, right? And the the spreadsheet that comes back every month to us is keeping a running total of the spending in phase 1, 2, and so forth. So we've got reporting within Fund 60 that's allowing us to track probably better than putting additional 61 funds, 62, 63 out there and having all this in it. Something established years ago. Now we're looking back on how do we clean up,
And a lot of
this
districts
past
just
stuff.
use sub-accounts or responsibility codes to
Yeah.
identify a project, and they still just have one Fund 60, and that's another option.
All right. Other questions?
So I just have one question. It isn't really incumbent upon the district to, for example, seek a different source of funding to make up for this 1.677 deficit. It's not incumbent upon the district to do that. It's not, just because it has a deficit balance doesn't mean that it can't be just netted.
Which are you're
I think
looking at your
Fund
treasurer's
61.
report. You're looking at your treasurer's
Yeah,
report.
here, take a look.
Yeah, I've
I
seen
think we have to
it.
be
Yeah,
careful.
I know
though,
that
those-
number, yeah.
The 35 million though in proceeds can't cover that deficit.
No, I'm asking whether or not there really is a need to provide any different kinds of funding for the future, when it sounds like what you have done as an auditor is always net the two together.
I think it's two different things. I mean, what type of funding or what type of reporting? I guess I'm confused on the question.
What type of funding, well, what type of reporting, I understand, you're netting the two together. But I guess my question is, if you have a fund that has a deficit in it, are you obligated to replenish that deficit even though there's another fund that you can net with it that puts you
Well,
in
it's not a
positive?
fund. It's not a fund. If Fund 60 completely was negative, then you'd have another issue, but it's not.
Right, okay.
So to talk about is it that fund doesn't exist. It's not recognized by the State Board of Education. It's
Okay.
only those together are.
Okay.
Okay.
But if we have revenues coming in to Fund 60 from the 35 million, you can't use that to cover because of the built ballot proposition. That's what I was trying to say.
So the balance of 2.5 million in Fund 60 includes some proceeds from the bond sales.
You're right.
Okay, so by blending the two together, if you take 1.6 out to clear up that negative balance, technically you'd be using some of the 35 million to cover that.
Which we can't do because of our ballot
But there
proposition.
is no negative balance. There is no negative balance.
But we have to worry about what projects that's covering. That negative balance or that amount, that 1.67 or 68 has to be covered by the original revenues. It can't be offset by this new infusion of the 35 million.
So let's, for argument's sake, let's say 2 million of the 2.5 in the capital fund is from bond referendum of the $35 million. And you blend the two together, you would be using some of the bond referendum money to offset that deficit balance.
Carrie, maybe could I chime in?
Yeah, please. I think it's kind of a weird
I
conversation.
think Ann Noble from Stifel, I'm the next agenda item,
Yeah.
but it all
Right, right.
relates.
It all does relate.
I think there are two things you're looking at here. This is the accounting analysis of what's going on in Fund 60 that Robin's explaining to you, but there's also a legal analysis of what's going on in Fund 60. So from an accounting standpoint, Robin's talking about the fact that they all get commingled together, and that's how that fund has shown balanced for the past several years. But from a legal standpoint, we can't commingle the projects associated with that negative 1.7 million for Glenwood Elementary with all of the projects and the revenue that were approved by the voters for the $35 million worth of bonds.
Okay.
They are not compatible simply just because of how the ballot language was written, what the voters approved. Okay, so
Yeah.
from an accounting standpoint, I absolutely understand what Robin's explaining and it makes perfect sense, but from a legal standpoint, it's a very different analysis. So from a legal standpoint, we can't commingle those monies. So we
Because
can't clear out the deficit.
Right, because
Glenwood.
Glenwood Elementary School is not an addition,
Right.
it's not an improvement.
That's right.
It's something that happened in the past. So we have to address the board, the district, how we are going to pay that $1.7 million deficit left over from Glenwood Elementary School.
That's right.
Correct.
And you have to do it some other way than with the $35 million
$35
worth of bonds that the voters approved.
Okay.
That is not an option.
Okay, that
Okay.
makes it, helps a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, you're going to be up, so we're going to have some more questions
Just
for
trying
you.
to preempt the.
Yeah, great.
Anything else?
Robin, I'd just like to thank you and your staff and Nate and your staff for all the work. And I over the past few years, I believe that we're seeing progress each year. We're very encouraged by the profile score, and the balances on an upward trend. It's taken a lot of hard work by Carrie and the board and the staff to swallow some cuts over the last couple of years. And we're not there yet, but we are we're in a better trend position than we were a couple years ago. So thank you for your guidance on helping us with that.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
All right, do we need a, that's,
Yes, we do need a motion.
do we need a motion on that? That's under, so I'll need a motion to approve the FY14 audit as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Susan. Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Linda. Betsy, please call the roll.
Maddox?
Yep.
Nucis?
Yes.
Morley?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Pop?
Yes.
Seermeyer?
Yes. Okay, we're going to go to 8.2. And just to frame this up a little bit, we talked about this in the Finance Committee. And what we were just talking about was cleaning up some of those old pre-existing negative balances. And one way to do that, and I thank bond counsel for being here, and bond representatives for being here, but basically, and I'd like just a second to frame it up a little, we've generated $23.9 million of the November 12 $35 million referendum authority to date. So 23.9 is already issued and out there, meaning that 11.1 million remains to be funded for the projects moving forward, i.e. phase 3. The current plan would include 9.4 million of referendum bonds and 1.7 of working cash fund bonds. So the 1.7 of working fund cash bonds would clear out the negative balance in Fund 61. But at the same time, we would reduce the amount that we would bond of the 35 million by the 1.7. So in a sense, our building projects now will consume 33.3 million, and 1.7 would be for working cash to clean up our Fund 61. The total is the 35 million that was approved by the voters, and that also keeps us at the 70-cent bond and interest tax rate, the target that we're trying to do. Now, from our discussions, there would be nothing that would prevent the board from spending or approving the 35 million, and in addition, put the 1.7 out there to clean up that negative bond balance with a working cash fund bond. But through our discussions through finance and with PMA and Carrie and the bond counsel as well, the decisions, what we're talking about is reducing the amount that will go out with by the 1.7 million, so the total of the two doesn't exceed the 35. So that's scaling back some of the building projects to stay within the 35 million and the 70-cent rate that the voters approved. All right?
And that's all to get to that 70-cent, not move above that 70-cent bond and interest levy rate, so. We just stole your show.
Okay. No.
I was gonna say, you didn't need us to come.
Yeah, we do.
No, Rick's got it summarized very well. The handouts just mirror what's up on the screen. We brought that just in case the paper copies would be easier to follow. But Rick's summary is spot on. The proposal that we discussed with Nate and Carrie is to find that solution to that negative 1.7 million, okay? Because those two funds cannot forever be merged together and result in a positive number, because at some point you will spend all of the 35 million approved by the voters, and then you will have negative 1.7 million left in Fund 60, and then we will have a problem. It's worked so far because we've had new revenue coming into that fund over these last few years due to the 35 million approved by the voters and the projects that you have ongoing. But we're reaching the last phase and we need to balance that out. So the goal of this approach is to not exceed what the voters approved, but basically issue the working cash fund bonds as a way to cover that 1.7 million, clean out Fund 61, and then you can collapse that fund. or sub-fund, Robin would hate to hear me say fund, and still stay within the 35 million approved by the voters and the tax rate target. Okay. The financings, on page 3, we also highlight for you that we are, just as we have on your previous financings, including in this next financing, some refinancing and restructuring of your current bonds, which we have done each time to manage that tax rate. We're just shaving off little pieces of bonds to keep us at that 70-cent tax rate. So we're doing a little bit of that in February when we do these new bonds. And then in September, we'll be back with another refinancing for about $4.5 million of the district's 2005 bonds that will be eligible for refinancing at that time. So we will have to do this in 2 steps. But it is necessary to manage to that 70-cent tax rate. And then we still have hanging out there the remaining 2010 Build America bonds, 2010A Build America bonds, that the district can refinance at any time as long as you're still subject to sequestration on your subsidy payments from the federal government. It's not built into this plan. It's just an option that will be available to you really at any point that savings seem appropriate to you. Let me back up. Well, Tammy covered you're going to talk about the petition hearing. Okay. So on page 4, we've just highlighted the financing plan for you. I know the numbers are very small, but we've accounted for all of the district's bonds, all the different series of bonds. We have revised the EAV growth assumption down slightly. It's 2.23% that we're using over on the far right-hand side, but this just shows you the big picture plan after all the bonds are done in 2015, but not the refinancing of the Build America bonds. So that's not built into this analysis. Okay. Are there questions about that? Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Tammy.
I do have a question on this 60-61. 61 is kind of an accounting, or if you want to
kind of a
track,
bookkeeping.
you want to track something in there, okay?
Right.
When you say you're tracking, but it's really all included in 60.
That's correct. From an accounting standpoint.
From an accounting standpoint.
Right.
So how can we have, if you're tracking something, how can you have a negative balance when it's a phantom fund, basically? It's not really a fund. It's not. It's not someplace where we put money into. It's just a tracking mechanism.
Well, because you tracked it to a negative place. The project's expenditures on Glenwood Elementary totaled $1.7 million more than the revenues made available to that project.
But are we sure that that's what the tracking is on that, Nate? Are we sure that that's what it is?
Yes.
So it went negative and it just never got put to positive.
Okay, I don't understand
And
how
it
something
was-
can be put negative if there's no money in that fund.
Well, because it's a phantom fund. Because
Well, it's a
fund-
tracking fund, basically.
That's right, because Fund 60 is the real fund.
Right.
And Fund 60 actually had revenue in it to cover the deficit, but it wasn't revenue that was properly legally available to cover the
It's
deficit.
the new revenue coming from 35 million, that we don't want to fund that amount.
So there's only $2 million in there, right? In that fund? Is that correct?
Yeah.
There's 2.4
But as we're
million.
getting revenues, it's coming in from the 35 million that we're selling. It's coming into that 60 fund, and it's covering
It's
for,
just so
but it
happened to
can't
work out.
continue that way.
That it's
Well,
covering it.
and we've done how many? 23 million? 23.5 million, something like that right now? Where is that accounted for on here?
The revenues have come in and the expenses have gone
Right.
out.
Right.
So it's all flowed
So we
into
have
that fund.
So we have a plus $2.4 million in that fund right now.
Right. Based on the revenues in and the expenses out.
But the problem is that negative balance in Fund 61 it's negative. The proper accounting methods for tracking the expenses and building of Glenwood Elementary School did not occur properly. The balance went negative.
Well, it sounds like the accounting was proper, but you can't pay for that out of the referendum money.
That's exactly right.
There's a revenue shortfall.
Right, you accounted for it.
Right.
It is properly
Accounted for.
for. There just is not offsetting revenue.
So we're still paying for GES, basically.
Yes. You have $1.7 million you haven't paid for yet.
We've paid the bills, it's just a
Right.
matter of.
Because you have the fund balance
Right.
from the referendum
Right.
to cover it.
So really, we inappropriately used the $35 million bond money to, I mean, the cash went out the door. We know that because vendors would be screaming if they hadn't been paid from building Glenwood Elementary School. The cash went out the door. So we know that.
Yeah, but which cash was used to pay those vendors, I do not know.
Right.
Was it paid out of the ed fund? Was it paid out of Fund 6? I mean, that's hard to say. It's accounted for in Fund 61, but in a negative way. But the actual revenue, I don't know if bond funds were used or if the ed fund was used
Well,
because most of the project was paid.
actually, I know, because in the June 14th, 2010 additional minutes, they were, that discussion occurred in closed session, which was subsequently opened in court. And I know for a fact that Mr. Gillum proposed, and it did happen, to take $4.75 million out of the education fund. He proposed taking $46 million out of the working capital fund. These are in the additional minutes of June 14th, 2010. That is, and he took some amount out of the O&M fund. I can't remember. The total amount that he took out for the school period 2010 to 2011 from these three operating funds to build Glenwood Elementary School was $5.375 million. It's documented in the minutes that were inappropriately classified as closed minutes. The district is now in abeyance by opening those minutes. This detail was not available to the public until the courts ordered us to open this set of minutes. So now I can say with assurance that $5.375 million of operating funds for the fiscal period 2010 to 2011 came out of revenues that could have been used for the classrooms at Chatham Elementary.
So instead of this money being shown coming out of a normal fund, they just created a sub-fund, earmarked to capital improvements, showed a negative balance.
Well, it was done to track project expenditures. I mean, I don't get the impression that it was done to try to inaccurately show what was going on with the project. I think it was created very much to track accurately the expenditures on the project.
But still, but 1.6 million hasn't been paid for out of that school yet.
It's been paid for.
Yeah, you paid the bills, okay?
Then
Yeah, as Mrs.
why
Worley
we haven't
stated.
come up with $1.7 million
Right.
to cover that negative fund?
Right.
Why?
It hasn't been paid for then.
It has been paid for and it's accounted for in the negative balance. So we need to clear up that balance so that the combined balance of 1661 does not get into a negative position. The school was paid for, as the referendum indicated and voters indicated, was paid for with education fund money.
But it's not paid for on our books.
Right.
That's my point. It's still hidden in the books, in that
It's not hidden, it's right
sub-fund.
there.
It's not hidden,
You know,
it's
it's
right
right
there.
there. It's been on our treasurer's report. When we've asked Nate and his predecessor to try to get a handle on some of these negative balances, find out why they exist and what we need to do to correct
Now,
them.
why is it taking 3 years to do it?
I don't know that answer, Steve, but Nate's been here since July, and he's brought this to the top, and we're addressing it.
Actually,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I do think it's coming to light now because we're nearing the end of some construction projects and the balance in Fund 60 is dwindling down. So when that goes down, we're going to have to make sure that this 1.7 is taken care of. So, elementary was an expensive project, and we've got to get the books cleaned up on that.
Actually, the way it was described to the taxpayers is that we would take the 15 million out of the district savings account to pay for the school. And the original number that was quoted for the building of that school was 12.3. With the construction, with the purchase of the land for 3.6, we'd be pretty close to, what was in the savings account that we were using. But as it turns out, we're 5 million over the originally stated $12.3 million to the public. That, I think, is the real issue at hand. And it's just come to light because Nate was providing reconciliation on the funding sources of Glenwood Elementary School. He was actually providing a reconciliation of the cash flow funds, and that's how it came to light. Because that reconciliation hadn't been performed. And that's unfortunate, but that's what happened.
Right, and moving forward, we're trying to reconcile, and of course, the grids and the spreadsheets on the current projects show us exactly penny to the penny where all the funds are going and how they're being spent. We're coming in over budget, under budget. We're
Correct. It's
involved in all of these.
great.
We're in great shape now. Well, this is kind of looking backwards, trying to look back to 2010 and recreate some things, and we're doing that and plugging the gaps that need to be plugged now.
It's a pretty expensive cleanup.
Oh, I agree. It was an expensive school. But it's out there and it needs to be paid for, and our accounting and our fund balances need to be as accurate as possible.
Okay, I have a quick question. I guess this 1.7 million could be refunded forever and ever, right? It could just be rolled into it. But if we feel that we have an obligation to the taxpayers to pay this off as quickly as possible, what's the shortest term that this 1.7 working cash fund could be repaid off? I mean, we can't do it anytime soon, but I'm certainly not interested in refunding the 1.7 million for years and years and years.
I think that's the February 2015.
No, but that's when the bonds are going to be issued.
Right.
But we're not going to pay the 1.7 million in 1 year.
Right.
What's the term length for that?
Well, right now it's all rolled into, let's see, do we have this split out? Let's see. Yeah, this is it, yeah. Right now it's spread out over the next 12 years.
Okay, so we're going to ask, I guess based on your schedule, we're asking the taxpayers to endure paying $1.7 million plus interest expense over 12 years.
Which is what you would be doing if you were selling the full amount of the 35 million of voter approved bonds. It's literally just replacing a piece
Correct.
of the voter approved.
Now,
We're just carving out a piece of it.
correct, but now your interest.
So it's not different than what we've already said, we're gonna spend
Right.
35 million.
Which is why we want to keep looking at the 70-cent rate. And
Right.
they do have to spread it over somewhat over time so
Right.
that they keep maintaining that bond and interest levy rate that we promised voters that would stay at 70 cents.
The shortest you could pay it back is 2.5, 3 years because of your
Okay.
tax cap limitations.
Right,
We can't
right.
repay it in 1 year. We could
Right.
spread it out over 2.5, 3.
Right.
But that would cause a big tax rate increase.
Yeah, okay, so
Because
we
that's
do
not
that.
built into the plan.
Then you're
Right.
off your 70
That's why it's
cents.
spread out.
Right.
And did you say that is on this chart here?
Yeah, it's
1.7?
hard to-
Is it the blue line?
It is that, yes, exactly.
The darker
That's
blue.
the,
Yeah, see, let me see what that is.
It's, yeah.
Here, I've got mine.
it's right. It's
Got it.
that, this
Okay.
line, this column.
And this showing it out 14 years,
Yeah, it's a 14, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time.
out to
Okay.
2029.
At 4%, why does it have to be 4%?
We're just estimating borrowing costs at this point because you're not selling bonds until February, so it's truly just an estimate.
Okay, and then the 1.7 in working capital bonds, what would we really have to sell so that net of the underwriter costs, legal counsel, what would we really have to sell to get to 1.7 net proceeds? Would it be like maybe 150,000 in issuance of bond proceeds by the time you count legal, underwriter, all the costs?
Yeah, it's about 40,000 of costs that are built into it.
Okay,
And the negative balance is 1,677,268.41. So is the 1.7 just a rounded?
Yeah, but
number?
the actual par amount of the bonds is $1,720,000.
okay.
So it's all included.
It's all included.
Yeah. There's no additional to that.
The only other option for you to clear out that negative balance is to use other district reserves that are legally available to be transferred. You can't use tort and IMRF and so on.
Right.
But other funds that are legally available, you could use to clean
Right.
out that negative fund balance, but you
Right.
can't use the 35 million.
For example, I mean, this is just information only, we're not making a board vote tonight. But in fact, I'm glad to hear you say that, because that in fact is one of the options that I had emailed to the Finance Committee members. And if we so chose, and if we felt it wasn't appropriate to burn the taxpayers with replenishing this deficit from Glenwood Elementary School, we do have 1.9 million in the working capital fund. So if the board so chose, couldn't we take the monies from that working capital fund, either entirely or a portion thereof, to pay some of this 1.7?
You could.
Okay.
And then you could decide whether you wanted to sell the 35 million, the full voter authorized amount, or
Correct.
not.
So then really the question comes and needs to be voted upon by the board is, we have monies of 1.9 million in the working capital fund, some of which was received as a result of our, the sale of our land proceeds. We could just have $200,000 left in our working capital fund and get rid of the deficit. Now, the negative to that is it significantly weakens our financial status, and we will quickly fall right down to the, tank right down to the bottom. I know that.
I was gonna say, I think you could.
Sounds like
that
that's not an
would
option.
impact the credit rating.
Well,
Why is that even an
actually,
option?
it's an option because maybe the taxpayers should not bear the burden at 100% by paying off this 1.7 million. It is an option.
We
It's
agree with,
an
and we agree
option.
with that, and that's why we want to maintain that 70-cent
That's
levy
what I was
rate
gonna
off to
add.
the side
How much
there.
would that reduce that 70 cents?
Not much.
It
Well,
wouldn't reduce it at all.
Zero.
no, because you'd still sell the 35 million that
Right.
the voters approved.
That's true.
So instead
So,
of, you
so
would,
it would, but it would greatly weaken our
rating.
credit rating,
Yeah, I mean, you're.
our ability to borrow money, our ability to do anything, put us on the watch list, I would assume.
And the cost of borrowing.
Correct.
I was
The
gonna say,
cost
the
of
cost of borrowing would.
correct.
I mean,
However,
that-
right,
that
that is
is-
true. However, the building of Glenwood Elementary School greatly weakened our financial statements. Rick
Well, it was approved.
Petermeyer is nodding his head.
It was approved by the,
Right.
by the resident, by the voters.
And when that went
Do
out,
it
there was
that
no
way.
way to predict what the current financial condition of our district or the state or the economy or everything. So a lot of things happened, after that time that put additional pressure on even the funding. I believe the per student funding at that time was similar to what it is today, so no one would have anticipated falling per student reimbursement. So there's a lot of pressures that have put us where we are. The good news, if you just reflect back to the financial statements that were made or the audit report, we've turned the tide in what we're doing here on the financial side. So.
And that decision was made by another board entirely, who made it based on the information they had, and they thought it was the best thing to do.
Well, I'm sorry, but I feel really discouraged that the taxpayers were told that Glenwood Elementary School would initially cost $12.3 million, where in the June 14th, 2010 additional minutes, the quoted number is $17.886 million. That was the number that was documented to the board members at that time. The taxpayers were not advised of what really transpired until the court required the district to open up the minutes of that meeting. And that is the difficulty I have. That is not being transparent.
Well, but we are being transparent.
No,
Susan, we are working our tails off to provide the reporting and the accounting and.
Correct, but I am saying that we will be addressing Glenwood Elementary School for a long time to come. And the board knew in 2010 that it was going to be $17.8 million. And that's what should have been told to the taxpayers right from the get-go.
And hindsight's very clear, and what we're trying to do is turn the board and turn the district to the future and try and make sure that we make good, informed decisions and improve the transparency and make sure that what we're doing is out here and discussed out here.
Correct. Transparency is very important from henceforward.
So we have options.
Few more slides.
Great.
Take you through if you'd like. And then we'll get out of your hair. Want to go to the next chart. Ann and I just wanted to talk for a minute about the municipal bond market, what's been happening so far in 2014 and where we are today. I think we've looked at this before. This is the MMD, or the Municipal Market Data AAA Bond Index. So whether you're a school district in Illinois or another unit of government, another state in the United States, your bonds sell at a spread or relative to this index. So we watch this index very closely every single day. And the lines just represent different points on the yield curve, with the 20-year bond at the top and the 1-year at the bottom in the blue. So we're over, obviously, on the right-hand side, and this chart goes back to early 1990. And we're not at quite the lowest point in this history, but it's a very, very favorable tone in the municipal market right now. 2014 has been very strong. A lot of that's been because supply has been down relative to recent years. The last couple weeks in particular, we saw a rally, meaning rates going down. Some of that driven by fears about things like Ebola and ISIS. When it causes a lot of anxiety in the stock market, there's an opposite effect in the municipal market. There's a bit of a correction in the municipal market over the last several days, meaning rates have come back up. We're, of course, eager to hear what the Fed is going to say this week. I'm sure there'll be some similar tone. We've heard from the Fed over the last several meetings that in some ways the economy looks better, but in other ways it doesn't. So we're just going to sit tight for now. But everyone is continuing to listen to the Fed very closely. But all in all, right now, the tone is very positive. And it's certainly Stiefel and PMA's hope that things will continue to be pretty strong by the time you may enter the market then in the next several months. No crystal balls, but it seems like, from certainly a historical perspective, the tone is really great. So, and along those lines, did want to talk a little bit about timetable, just to let you know what to expect. If you could go to the next slide. Thanks. So, There's a few different financings going on here, as Ann explained. So what we would suggest, if the board would like to pursue the sale of the working cash bonds, there's some different requirements than there are for referendum bonds, as you can imagine. At your November 24th meeting, you could consider adoption of a resolution of intent to issue working cash bonds and adopt a resolution to call a BINA or a bond issue notification act hearing. Those are two requirements in the statute before you can sell working cash bonds. Then notices would go in the newspaper a few days later informing the public of your intent to issue the bonds and the fact that you're going to hold a hearing, which we would suggest you could do at your meeting on December 15th. And once that notice of intent appears in the paper, which is tied to this resolution up here, that starts a 30-day clock on November 28th, okay? So during that 30-day period, the law says if the Board of Education is presented with a petition that at least 10% of the registered voters within the district's boundaries sign, then the board would have to step back and not be able to sell the working cash bonds on a non-referendum basis, because that is what you would be doing with this process, okay? If you get through that 30-day petition period, you don't get those signatures, you can continue to move forward. And that gets us into January 2015. Okay. Then we would bring to you for consideration at your January 26th board meeting, adoption of a parameters resolution, which you're familiar with this type of resolution. You've adopted these before, where you set forth certain parameters for the sale. You name delegates who will ultimately approve the sale results for the 2015 referendum bonds, the sale of working cash bonds, and also that tiny little $150,000 small taxable refunding that we estimate we'll need. That would actually also be allowed for in that parameters resolution. Then we would expect to try to be in the market the first week of February with that transaction and close by the end of February, okay? And we are trying to tie to the 2014 levy or impact that 2014 levy. So if we're going to do that, we do need to have the transaction in the market by the end of February, okay? And then these other dates out here are later in 15. Ann mentioned that there's an opportunity to refund some more bonds later in the year per the rules of the IRS. We would come back with a parameters resolution for the board to take those steps in August and execute the transaction in the fall of 2015. So a lot of moving parts that we'll keep close track of, but it all should fall into place if that's the path you'd like to take. And we will not read this to you, I promise.
What is the current AA minus rate now? We're at AA, our rating is AA minus. What's the
You're
current?
AA minus, right.
What's the current rate, interest rate?
Well, based on,
I mean, the AAA rate was posted, but then what's general guideline? I mean, we're not AAA, we're AA
Right.
minus.
right. In the current market, a AA minus is, I would estimate probably 50 to 60 basis points below the AAA, or 0.5 to above, sorry,
Okay.
0.5 to 0.6% above.
Okay, great.
I'm thinking on the line, it's below the line.
Thank you very much for the information. And that was information, so there's no action to be taken on that item. All right.
Sorry to take so much of your time.
No, thank you. These are,
You did.
I know, big topics.
yeah, it's
Thank
important.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your time and prep. Appreciate it.
I promise I won't say it.
Okay, 8.3, technology assessment. Carrie, you want to bring us up to speed
Yeah,
on
we'd
this?
like to introduce the Sentinel representatives to talk about where we are, some of the conversations we've had so far. So Jack is going to start probably, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yes?
Okay, and Carrie?
So your placement on the agenda is, this is a critical component of the district, and it's a topic that's on the top of our agendas, so.
Yes, it's been a pleasure to be involved in the project, and appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you. It's a project we've been involved now for 6 weeks or something like that. I guess the first time I met with the district. So my name's Jack Schoonover. I am with Center Technologies, and I want to kind of walk through what we've accomplished so far, where we are in the process that you've already agreed to do with us, and then take it from there. So the document you have in front of you, the first line item is citrus maintenance. And this is for the amount $71,988.95. This is to renew the Citrix maintenance that has expired. This is between you and Citrix. That has nothing to do with Sentinel. You're utilizing Citrix software today. It's expired. It needs updated. In order to do the updates to get rid of some of the known bugs that you have, that is an annual renewal amount that you had been paying in the past. It's relapsed, so that's the first item there. Outdoor wireless, that was, and I've got more detail in here. So that was a big concern, a big issue you were having. We've done some assessments. We've been here. In fact, I'm going to flip around a little bit, so I apologize for that. But if you flip to page 2, I guess would be the best place to go there. We were engaged, and your wireless was going up and down, up and down. We brought a team of engineers in. Basically, the throughput that we were getting was fairly small. There's a lot of interference that's occurring with the radios that you had. So we worked with Carrie and Jen to bring a team in over the weekend. They worked on Friday, assessed the situation, came in. We loaned you some radios, put them on the towers. You're up and running. You've been stable since. That was, I believe, the 19th, Sunday the 19th, if I recall. So they worked pretty much all day to get you up and going. That's a stable environment today. We're working through proposals to provide to you as to what the cost would be to actually replace the radios that we have loaned you, and there'll be options to kind of talk about throughput and that kind of a thing. And then along those lines, there are going to be recommendations in that same category there. You can look at some options, whether it be fiber through, say, a Comcast type of scenario where it may exist. You pay a monthly fee, and then we're also going to provide and have provided some preliminary budget on what it would be to bury fiber and to utilize that fiber as your main data transport, and then the radios that we're proposing to get you to where you are now to a higher grade, that would become a backup for you. So it would be an investment that you wouldn't be getting rid of by any means. It's a lot of businesses, schools, private sector use the wireless for a backup. So somebody does construction, they cut the fiber district down or a school building down, they back up to the wireless and they continue to run. So that's where we currently are on the wireless. We also loaned you a couple of edge routers, Cisco routers, to put QoS on them. The switches that you have in place today do not support QoS. What QoS means, it's the quality of service. So when you go in and you give different technology a priority over the other, for example, video or other deemed necessary technologies, it has priority over some of the other data traffic, and it works in a more streamlined pattern as it's recognized in the network. So we've loaned you a couple of routers. We're still going through an assessment to look at other devices on your network, which is another project, to look at what you may want to invest in to give that more of a more robust network as you move forward with QoS in more areas other than just the two that we've loaned you so far. But it's been stable since we've done that, and continues to be a vast improvement based on all the feedback that we've gotten. The SAN assessment, which is number 4 on the first page, and I'm going to bounce around on you again. I apologize for that, but if you'll go back to the pages, it's the next to the last page, I believe. It's the items 1 through 15. So it's the 3 high rating items, medium, So we came in and there was a number of issues going on with the network on past.
Am I on the right page? I'm sorry.
That's all right. You're one page up, I'm sorry. 2 pages.
One more.
This is
Nope,
the last
that's it.
one.
Okay.
Go the other way.
Oh, go ahead.
That's the last page, yeah, the second to last.
Second to last is right there.
So if you go up one more to the SAN assessment results.
Oh, here it is.
There you go.
Okay.
So one of the issues you were having was the various teachers, staff were complaining of being slow, not being able to find files, those kinds of things. So one of the first things we looked at was your current SAN or storage area networks. And they are currently under maintenance. So we went through and looked at a number of different areas, and they're highlighted here, and they're rated high, medium, and low. So some of them, you can take immediate action. You've paid for the maintenance with EMC as the manufacturer, and some of these can be resolved at no cost whatsoever to you. Some of them are going to be a cost. So these 15 items, to bounce on you again, I'm sorry, are broken down again on the front page. So the SAN assessment you paid $15,315 for, we broke them down into the levels of those pages. So 6, 9, 10, 11, and 13, which was on that page. We have gone through here and assessed remediation for that. Some of that is simply getting EMC involved and having them do updates, which haven't been done in a while, and getting them up to the latest code. And some of those errors will go away because there are some known bugs in the older software. So that is a no cost to you. Your staff can do that at no cost. And then as we move through here, some of the items 4, 5, and 8, we're recommending the reconfiguration of the arrays on that. And I believe that was at a cost of $1,800, I believe, for that. We don't have a cost on it yet. So that's still being determined, but it's an area that needs addressed. We're in the process of continuing to assess, and some of these dollars will be coming back to you. But there are different ways of configuring technology. Times change over years 1, 2, 3. I think you're in year 4 that you own this. So there are ways to go in and changing the optimization and making those faster and more useful to you in terms of space and how things are configured. So we continue to go through that process with you. Another area to bounce around a little more for you, I apologize, that we were having was, that you were having was the email was causing you a lot of issues, up and down, not a stable environment. So we came in and assessed and discovered that the Exchange server, the email server, had ran out of space. So that was the reason it was not in a stable situation. So we came in, and you have a external storage device, and we took the data off your Exchange server, moved it to an external storage device to give it more space, and it's up and running. That's not best practice. There is no redundancy today. We're recommending that you change that, and we'll have more recommendations as we move forward, but it is stable. To the best of my knowledge, it hasn't gone down since we did that. Teachers haven't complained, to the best of my knowledge, since we've done that. So it's stable, not fixed, but it's temporarily off on another storage device that you own and running. So another area to look at. Zen Server. You currently have Zen Server running your virtual environment. We would recommend you move away from Zen Server and go to VMware. Zen Server as a technology is not the best practice today. VMware has taken over that market share in a big, big way, much more support, much more user-friendly and robust. So we're recommending that be, at some point in time, moved away from. Currently, there's no high availability or redundancy in the XenServe environment, so we'll come back with recommendations of making sure that you have redundancy. So if a device does fail, hardware fails, you won't be down. You'll be able to fail over to another device and keep that stable environment. Currently today, you do not have a backup solution. So we are recommending, going to recommend EMC. Since you have EMC storage, we're going to recommend EMC data domains to use as backups. And there's a number of options that will provide you as to how that may be configured. You may look at having them at 2 different schools. You may look at having one here, one in the cloud. There's options you can look at to give yourself more redundancy and more resilience in that area. Web filtering and device management. We're going to come back with being able to manage Cisco WSA. It is going to be our recommendation. But in order to manage those devices, to reduce where some of the children can go, how much bandwidth they can use, all of that technology exists. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of it in your district. So when someone brings their personal device into the school, they have a lot of flexibility to use it, which is good, except when it interferes with day-to-day business. So there's tools that we can help you with to implement and throttle that back and control that. Active Directory and group policy. This is really just kind of a cleanup, if you will. It's more of a structured approach based on today's practices to go in and make that a more streamlined scenario for you. It's been pointed out to us that you have multiple voice systems within the environment, so we can help you look at that if you wish for us to engage on that, and perhaps going to a single platform, taking advantage of the network that you're investing in and making more of that of a more current environment. We can go in all kinds of features and benefits to why that would be, but I'd say it's probably much more for a later day. There's definitely a lot to be done prior to getting to that point. And then the next page, after page 1, goes into breaking what I had just described to you down in greater detail, which I won't go through each one of those. The next page goes through the completed projects that we have completed, and it goes into the email was down, the SAN assessment we completed, the wireless where we came in and loaned you the access points. You did sign a network assessment. We are in the process of identifying all the devices and their current versions and the status of those devices. That should be done very quickly. Hopefully by the end of this week, we will have it internally, be able to massage it, take a look at it, and summarize that in a report back to you. Hopefully next week is our goal. You have also signed with us 48 hours to have a project manager come on site. You had approximately 350 open tickets when we engaged with you. I was talking to the project manager this morning. Those tickets are down in the neighborhood of 165 that are open today. So we're
I think we got an update that they're at 99, right?
99? 100.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
All right. So we've gone from 350 to 100 in a pretty short period of time. So, and a lot of those tickets were cleared up because the network, the email is not going down every day. The wireless is not going down every day. A lot of that just basically disappeared when that was cleaned up and addressed. So we will continue to work with your current staff and monitor those and help them prioritize and make sure that we're addressing that. The next page is, again, a lot what I was talking about, but it breaks it down into ticketing. We have our own ticketing environment, so everything gets ticketed, addressed, escalated if need be, and then reported back to you as a customer. So this is a summary of those tickets. As we move through the next 2 pages, we addressed, or at least I discussed, the SAN assessment 1 through 15 on the next page, and then we take page 1 and start breaking that down into the EMC support, which again, you have support today, so this is something your staff can work on to address this. This is not a cost to you from Central. Quote statement of work for the Citrix. So again, that's work in progress that is currently taking place. The big picture, as we move forward, we start identifying, getting our arms around the holistic approach as we finish the network assessment, find out exactly what all devices you do have, what their current status is, and take a look at that. We'll start coming up with a bigger picture as to what that might look like, and provide Carrie and Jen kind of a menu item, and then help prioritize that, or you help us prioritize that as we move forward and looking at those items. And then number 4 is the SAN assessment and changing the configuration of your current SANs. It's recommended that we do that. However, it's a fairly in-depth project where you have to take everything off your current SAN, move it to another storage facility, reconfigure them, and then move that back. So it's going to be probably maybe Thanksgiving, probably not since that's so close, probably a Christmas break kind of situation where you'll have plenty of time, take it offline, no impact to business, make sure it's all configured properly, copy back on, tested, and then when the students come back after Christmas break, it's an up and running, much smoother processing system. That's a summary of where we are. So I don't know how questions you have for me, but
What have you done so far on, I know that we have some issues, obviously, with transmission between locations.
yes.
And it would seem that fiber through Comcast and direct buried fiber would be some expensive options to do that. Very expensive options, and, you know. And
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you got a question?
No, I was just going to say it is, and one of the biggest concerns is getting across the bridge. That's the biggest cost you would have.
Exactly, and then we have to worry about, I mean, just at the high school and within the last year, I think somebody cut fiber out there that had our internet access, or that was our internet access, and they cut that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes,
you know, there's a lot of coordination that goes in with that to make sure that that doesn't happen. But how are the improved electronics on the towers working? Is that, I know you've got some options to use what you got there, or to apply for our own license, which would add some more stability to it.
Correct.
And add more reliability to it also, because you do get a lot of interference on it, crosstalk interference type of thing. So, you know, I mean, to me, that's one of the things we have to stabilize. As you said, we have to stabilize the network. And before we could do everything at the ends of those, you know, at the different schools. If we don't have a network, it really doesn't make any difference.
correct.
So,
Yeah, I mean, they're, you know, just at a 10,000 foot view, the technology appears to be about 4 or 5 years old, kind of at the core infrastructure. Lot of changes between, you know, then and today in technologies. To the wireless point, you're exactly right. You were running and currently running on a non-licensed frequency. That space continues to get busier and busier and busier, and you'll change this, and then the next guy will change that, and you know, it does this effect, right? You get more bandwidth, you get less bandwidth. In a licensed frequency, which is what we are going to recommend, it is a set bandwidth that you can travel across, and that bandwidth remains your bandwidth, and it's licensed FCC, so nobody can interact with those frequencies. So it will give you much greater stability and much greater throughput than you had. Just in reference, I think you were about 10 to 12 meg of throughput on the radios you had. The best we can get out of what we have now is about 60. But if someone around decides to change a frequency, that could drop. I mean, if we got in airspace over the weekend, you know, they could change their frequency, and you could go right back to where you were pretty quickly. But that's the nature of that beast. As the technology evolves, everybody gets access points at home and all those things, and on license, and everybody fights for that open space, if you will.
Are those licenses hard to get?
No, we do all the paperwork for you. It takes 2 to 4 weeks. There's a fee, but I think it's minimal. I think it's under $100 if I remember correctly. But it's something that we do all the time. We have an outdoor group that does that for us. It's internal to Sentinel, but it's an outdoor wireless group division of our company. And we build towers. We support a lot of various businesses all over the country. So it's a great way to go. Is fiber a direction to go? Perhaps, long term. It continues to get larger and larger and larger. Is it an investment? Certainly, yeah. And as I said, your biggest challenge is the bridge.
Right. And from my understanding of Comcast is that it's not a private, obviously not a private network, it's not a private fiber system.
Mm-hmm.
So you contend with all of the other users in that using that same fiber, where if we have a direct barrier, it's our fiber. We're the only ones that are on it. The problem with that, though, is that as technology changes, we're responsible then for the equipment at either end of that fiber to make sure it's working. We own it.
Yeah.
It's not. And if it's cut, we have to worry about getting somebody out there to splice that stuff back together. So.
Correct. I mean, there are maintenance programs you can purchase and all the kinds of things. But yeah, you're correct. It is a private fiber network at that point in time, and the maintenance would be something you'd have to consider as a budget. So there's a lot to think about there, the pros and cons, why or why not. But technology is certainly moving that direction.
Sure.
It gets less and less expensive every year. So it's certainly nothing that you have to think about tomorrow or next meeting, but it is something to consider and want to address. But the radios you're on today, at last look, they're around about 60 meg versus the 10 or 12 you were. So they're stable. As long as somebody doesn't get into that space, they'll remain stable.
One of the things too, Jack, that I was going to address, I don't know if you want to talk about this, that currently our configuration is that we send everything to transportation and then out to the buildings. And if we went with the new radios, we could send it right from transportation to out straight, to the buildings instead of everything coming from transportation, right?
Correct,
We could
yeah.
reconfigure those?
Yes, so we have a proposal. We didn't get it completed for this meeting. We got it late this afternoon based on a meeting we had Friday morning. So it is a reconfiguration of the existing radios that you have, and then you purchasing 2 radios that we have loaned you. So it does streamline the path that is going to give you much better throughput. And we're also recommending that you put the radio, I believe it's at the high school, on top of the auditorium to give you greater line of sight. Since you put those in, trees have grown, things have changed. So that will give you a greater line of sight. So Mike Sewell, one of our outdoor engineers, was here on Friday, shared that document. And
The first one's what we have now, and then the second is how they can reconfigure it. So is that something that we would do quickly on?
we will have a proposal to you probably tomorrow, and you could do that immediately, yes.
I think it was approximately 20 to 25,000.
It was for the 2 radios for the school
And the
transportation,
license.
and then he was gonna move 2 others at some of the other locations, so that would be added in there, but.
And labor cost in there
Yes.
too.
Right, yeah, we're gonna reuse, most of your existing infrastructure today.
We're just gonna replace the longest top, where you're having the most difficulties.
Yeah. Over time, you may want to look at replacing more, but to get you the biggest, least investment, biggest bang for your dollar, if you will, that's what we're trying to accomplish with the reconstruction of the current radios and then adding the 2.
Fiber currently terminates from, Illinois?
Illinois Century Network?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't it terminate at the high school?
I believe it does, yes.
Okay. So right now, we're sending it from the high school on radio back to transportation?
transportation seemed to be the focal point, and then it bounced from there back out, which we're trying, what the goal would be to not have that redundant path.
Because then to go back to high school, it just goes back on
It just
that same
bounces back,
path.
yeah.
So you got
You
got double the
You got
capacity to
latency
get
for no
there.
reason, yes, yes.
The only thing if you're gonna, this being that one from Glenwood High School to transportation to Ball, if you had a problem with the transportation, because it goes then to GIS, GMS, and out to Ball from there. If you have a problem with that, that antenna, then you've got 3 schools, or 4 actually, 4 buildings that are offline. Is that?
In a district office, currently we have that and.
No, I'm talking about the
Chatham.
new configuration.
Oh.
The new configuration, if that was the case, potentially you'd have 4 buildings offline, right?
Yeah, so I'm not on the technical side of things, but I
Okay.
believe that would be correct.
It's just better than what we have now.
Yeah,
Right.
you're taking multiple buildings down today if the radios aren't communicating the way they're designed today, because they go out there and then they come back anyway. So it's taking care of a latency issue, but it's not necessarily adding a layer of redundancy, so you would be correct. Faster, but still a point of
failure.
of failure, yes, sir. So you could keep a spare radio, you could put a maintenance contract on it. There are a number of things we could do to help you remediate that.
Sure. Well, the other, I don't know what the cost would be, but to put a direct link between the high school and Ball, so at least you would have one less issue if that circuit went down.
Yeah, it's adding radios. All we were trying to do is give you the best performance for what we had without, making a larger investment today, knowing that, at any given time, if somebody does tweak their wireless, you are vulnerable to your bandwidth going down in the current situation. So all that's contingent on budget, I guess. That's what it boils down to.
So what we've evolved to by acts of nature, right? Lightning strikes and really the perfect storm this year with everything being overwhelmed at the same time and high utilization, high usage. And, so what we've evolved from is a totally in-house IT department to a hybrid now with an internal resources as well as some external consulting resources that are allowing us to really have that outside, high-level view of what we have, how can we maximize what we have and best utilize what's out there, and then some plans for moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to work with Carrie and Jen to really give you a roadmap, if you will. These are the things, as we highlighted here, some of the things you need to do immediately because they're going to they are causing you pain, they're going to continue to cause you pain. And then roadmap, what's step B, C, and D, and then allow you to look at budget and make those choices of what you think are priority for you and how we might be able to help you utilize that.
This is also tied to our earlier presentation on finance and the bonds as to what part of this is infrastructure and what can be paid for with those types of dollars. So we're seeing the district have to move with the ebb and the flow of what's going on in the current environment out there. I do have a question on some of these projects will be expensive. What are the bid requirements for these? Is each one a separate bid component, or how will we handle this?
Would we need a plan first?
Well,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think technology has some different
right.
Bid specifications or bid parameters than building a school or paving parking lots, that sort of thing, so. And I'm not sure all what they are, but
So we'll look into that, and we want to make sure that we're.
Sure, absolutely,
we're, you know,
absolutely.
generating the best value that we can. Not saying that you're not at all.
No,
but,
no, I mean, that's common practice. We totally want to adhere to your.
You guys handle the acquisition of hardware as well?
Yes, sir.
So are there options out there, I know most people don't, but are there lease type options out there where, say your company was involved with the district, you set up a network or helped us reconfigure and set up the network now? Most stuff's obsolete within 3 years. At that 3-year point, we have some ongoing relationship where it's just automatically upgraded. And budgetarily, we know every year what our expense is going to be because of how that agreement is. Is there options out there such as that?
Absolutely, yes. And in that, you can also roll in a number of different maintenance options, management options, depending on how you want to move forward as a district, and is it a hybrid type of solution as far as, support and those kind of things? Yes, the answer is yes. And then, you based on a 36-month or 48-month or whatever refresh rate that the budget.
So we know we don't get out of date on hardware. From a budget perspective, we're not having last minute stuff thrown at us that now all of a sudden it's got to make us completely change pathways.
Absolutely.
So if we go the lease route and for the first 3 years, we're using System A, but we're advised that if you go to System B, you're going to be cutting edge. So as a lease, we don't own the equipment until the end of the lease, at which we buy it for $1. So does that, or $10 or whatever.
What I'm saying is it's automatically replaced.
Okay.
Right?
It can be. I mean, there are different ways to lease equipment. You can do a fair market value, you can do a dollar buyout, you can have it automatically refresh. I mean, it just depends on what.
So it depends on what the terms
for
of the lease
Yes.
are.
Correct.
So we do have a lease with AOS, and if it turns out that some of the equipment, let's just say we don't have an automatic refresh, but we read the terms of the lease. I mean, my understanding of a lease is you don't own it until the end of the lease and you buy it for a nominal amount. Wouldn't we have I mean, I know you're not a financial, this is not your realm of expertise, but as far as, legal terms of leases, but you certainly work with leases within your industry.
We do.
And so does that give us the opportunity to, whatever, sounds like, for example, the Zen server is obsolete, so can't we, technically, right, okay, so can we go back to the lessor and say, we don't want this, we're giving it back? I guess it would depend on the terms of the lease, correct?
It would definitely depend on the terms of the lease, yes.
So
all that.
So I better read the master lease agreement, right?
Yeah, but all of that
Correct.
is putting the plan together, right?
Correct.
What is the 3-year, 5-year? That's really about as far as you can think out in technology. What's the 3 to 5-year plan? And what best suits the district to move that direction? Is it a capital expenditure? Is it a operational expense that you want to incur in a lease cost from now for 36 months? Do you want to own the hardware because you're going to try to stretch it 3 years, or you don't want it at all? You want to refresh it every 3 years, knowing that amount is going to be the same or similar. It may not be exactly the same, but similar. So that's all decisions that you need to make.
So I have
as
to
a
look
board.
for that term in the master lease, right? Automatic refresh?
Well, there's a lot of legal terms in a master lease,
I think that would be a good
yeah.
thing for this new technology
Correct.
committee to look at.
Correct,
Yeah.
I agree.
Along with the consultants from Sentinel and our own technology.
Yeah, we can certainly help you with that. And there are options.
So we're being asked to consider the Citrix maintenance
Right.
renewal.
And, yeah, the Citrix maintenance agreement, as well as the upgrade of radios and the license frequency.
So
But that's a
Those are our
proposal.
first two.
We don't
You
have
don't have
that.
that.
You don't have the final number
Okay.
on the radios at
I
this
didn't know
point
how
in
quickly we
time.
needed to do that. We had an estimate of 20 to 25,000 at the time.
Something like that. I don't recall exactly what the number is, but it's in that ballpark.
That's something that can wait a little bit longer too.
Could we act
I don't
on
want us
that
to-
our meeting on Thursday?
I don't know. Well,
That would give us 48 hours to
Right.
post it.
right. We have a meeting on Thursday too.
Okay.
I just didn't know how long those 2 radios, it's at 66, right?
It's a
Right
60
now?
meg today.
And we have up to 100 available to us, right?
Correct.
Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Well, we
100
can
meg.
do, we're also meeting on a week from today.
We are.
as
We have a couple more
Jim
meetings coming up
noted.
that we could put it on the
And
agenda
our tech
for.
committee is meeting Thursday too.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
will get you the
We'll get
proposal
through until then.
tomorrow.
is- Right?
Unless someone changes
Interferes
something
with our-
around you, it should not change.
Right.
I got a question. Carrie, what's our current technology plan look like? Because all we're talking about here is making sure our buildings are connected.
In a sense, I mean, connected and then,
Is that
and then
right?
the storage, the MC storage, it is the depository for files, so.
Correct.
We're talking about, that's not really a connectivity issue, that's more of a repository of data. And then we're talking about backups, which isn't really a connectivity issue, that's more of a, making sure you have everything backed up, to business function. We're talking about, upgrading switches and those kind of things, which is a connectivity issue. I guess that would be a true statement from there. But there's a few things that aren't necessarily connectivity. It's more of a how we move forward.
But are all them part of our plan? I mean,
Well, and-
do we really have a
And
plan?
the problem that I think with our plan so far has been we've focused so much on more devices, which is a good thing. I mean, I think we've been trying to get the hands, children, devices in the hands of children. And I think that's been our focus for a long time, that we've neglected some of the needs between the buildings and to communicate between the buildings, and what we're understanding from their SAN assessment is the storage needs, which we understand a virtual environment has to rely on storage,
Yeah.
storage in order for it to function. And so
Right.
the logins and things like that,
The Chromebooks, for example, you have Chromebooks, 1,000 of them, I think, in the district.
How many do we have?
I believe 1,000, but
Oh, I didn't know that. That's good to know.
maybe not. That's a number I heard.
That's good to know.
Regardless of the number.
Right, I
You're
knew
aware
that.
the
you're aware that
device.
we're in a current lease agreement with some equipment right now and software.
Yeah.
That stuff was told to us that it was going to last 7 to 8 years. Was that, you're saying 3 to 4? Technology changes quickly, don't it?
It does. I mean, you may get more or less out of it. It depends on a number of factors that drive that, right? I mean, some of it is how well it's implemented into the classroom. That's a beautiful thing. But the more you implement it, the more applications you have, the more space it needs.
So I
So it's a
guess-
great thing. It's hard to predict.
That lease agreement for equipment, was that for our students or was that just for our staff and teachers? And
both, because it's some labs and some staff hardware, staff computers too. So
Okay, and is all that going to work when you get all this connection stuff and network put together?
So we're still doing assessments to see what you have and how it interconnects, and then we'll be able to tell you that after that. At this point, I'm looking in the dark because we haven't finished all that discovery work.
Okay, and I'm in the dark too, because all I know is that we've spent a lot of money on technology, and I know it's going to always be an ongoing expense because
It is.
it changes.
Yeah, you know.
But we got to have a plan
You're a school
too.
district,
We
but you're a
can't just-
business.
That's
I
what
mean,
we
that's
need
really
them
what you
for.
got into. You're a business and you're offering tools to your students, but they're employees, not employees, but they're part of the staff in a sense, and that's how you're teaching. So in order to maintain best practices and keep that up to speed and meet all the requirements that you're required now through the Board of Education to teach and all that, it's an investment that it's ongoing. There's no question about it.
And it's important to have a plan, otherwise we're just shooting in the dark and, oh, this seems
Yeah.
neat, let's try this, this seems neat, let's try this.
Yeah.
So this committee we're talking about, is it already put together?
it is. We have teachers from each building, we have some support staff members, administration. Well, actually,
And it's
we're
on the
gonna, on the
agenda
agenda
to-
next to what 2 board members, we have 2 volunteers, but our goal is to have Sentinel come to us with the expertise, the technology expertise, and say, this is what you need to do, similar to what you've seen tonight, but to help all of us understand, and then take that next step and look at what our plans are, because we've planned so much, we've relied so heavily on, let's get more Chromebooks and more, we've focused on that so much that now we need to look at focusing on these needs, which is why we said, let's put a halt to construction so that we can afford to do some of the upgrades that are needed, they're telling us we need.
You mentioned storage is a problem? Or
So,
a limit, we're limited by the amount of storage we have right now?
It's just not set up.
so the current sands, which are EMC sands, they, the configuration needs to be changed to today's best practice so you can utilize them better.
So do we have the equipment, it's just not configured
Yeah.
properly?
Yeah.
Yeah, you made a great investment. It's just we need the applications that are on those arrays. We could be putting them in higher performance. You have tiering to where it just makes everything work so much better. So.
And will
those
this
are those-
Citrix agreement do this for us?
The Citrix agreement, so your Citrix environment is on those arrays, so the Citrix maintenance is gonna get you up to the latest version, fix those bugs, so your servers won't be crashing, it'll make the logins a little bit faster. So it's little things based off the SAN assessment that we proposed in here, just to make things work better with the investment you've already made. I don't think you need to replace that, I mean, I think that was a great investment, we just need to make it work better.
There's no one single fix.
Yeah.
And maybe where you heard me say you're out of storage was in the Exchange server. That might have been where you heard me say that, because the Exchange
Email
server
Exchange server.
did run out of storage on the server it was on. We moved it to a
But backup-
storage device.
But we
that
need
you could-
backups too for.
Backups are, yes,
All the data.
yes. I mean, there are a lot of moving parts that need to be addressed, and then you get the chance to prioritize them.
So at least the agreement we're in is not wasn't a complete package, it was just a part.
Right.
Yes,
And we
correct.
really needed a lot of other stuff to go with it.
If you decide to go lease.
We may now.
You
It's
know-
not necess, teaching methods have changed so much over the last 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Every kid in the school's got a device, just about. I don't care, they might be in first grade, they've got devices. And I think one of the things, and you said it too, you gotta prioritize those things. You can't let some kid walking down the hall hog bandwidth
Mm-hmm.
on a YouTube thing that he's watching between classes. You have to prioritize those things so that it goes to what it should be, to the teachers and to administration first, and to make sure that those are why we're here. We're not here to give kids free access to the internet between classes. So,
Is that what's happening?
Yes, I'm sure. I mean, you give them free rein and they're gonna do what they're gonna do, sure.
Now, we've got some blocks out there now for what, YouTube and,
Right now, we went ahead and we're putting those back
Filters.
in, letting them use those again, because we
Yeah.
think we can do it.
There's a lot of tools that weren't available 3 to 5 years ago that are on the market today that you can utilize to better manage networks. And that's where you are. You're at a point in time where you need to look at that, put a plan together and take it from this point forward. And then, you know, based on budget, what you can afford to do now and what needs to be put into a plan in years.
But the Citrix maintenance agreement's a must.
It is.
Get
It
rid of
is,
the bug.
because without it, you are on software that has known bugs and you cannot upgrade.
It's
And
like-
that's nothing to do with
And we-
Sentinel or anybody else, it's Citrix.
We're renewing that, so we had it, and were we not using it?
It expired in March 31st of 2014.
Yeah,
So were we fixing bugs as we went along, or?
I wasn't involved in district, so I will assume so,
You
but
have
I
the
don't know.
ability, so I mean, if they were, you had the ability to, if the staff was doing it, I don't know, but when we noticed some of the bugs, we went in to do it, and our engineer noticed that it was expired. So that's all I know.
so we can renew it now, and it would start back up again as if there was no gap. They don't say, hey, you didn't have it in June and this isn't covered, or,
No, yeah, you'll be, as soon as you renew it and you do it directly with them and send them a PO, you're reinstated and we can do the work that we need to do, some of the upgrades and firmware and all that stuff.
okay, so.
How many people have you had in the district on a daily basis? You talking a few, or you talking a dozen, or?
On a daily basis, 1 to 3, we've had probably a total, including ourselves, 8, 9?
Mainly for meetings and stuff, but
Yeah.
working wise.
Working wise, you know.
One engineer
one
typically.
primary engineer,
And then
one
sometimes
primary project
the tower
manager.
climbers over the
Yeah,
Sunday.
and then the wireless guys.
So,
Wireless
wait,
guys. Two
one
wireless.
engineer and Jen, aren't you the project manager?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Jen is helping direct,
the
but she's
liaison,
not, she's
okay.
not a technician, so.
Okay, so you've had one engineer.
Primarily.
And one project manager
Primarily, yes.
on site pretty much all day then?
There have been days that they've been here all day, yes.
Like when we went down,
Mhm.
and
Right.
to do the email server that he was talking about, that took an entire day.
Well, with that, we had to engage another engineer from Sentinel, that woman who helped,
Dawn,
Online.
Hurley Charles.
so she wasn't on site, but she was
Correct.
assisting us.
So what do you think our fees are today, Gary? I mean, I'm not holding you
Actually,
to,
Gary would have those. The fees to date, we've got. I
just
don't
your
know, but they're looking-
consulting fees today.
We guys have an agreement, it's $150 an hour.
No, I know, I know
How
that,
much do you
but,
think it's all totaled up to be so far?
yeah, just take a ballpark.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I can find out and follow up.
That would be nice,
Okay.
because you probably bill monthly. Or do you bill bi-weekly?
Projects are typically monthly.
Yeah,
This
that would
type
be
of
great.
time material
I
work is
mean,
usually
Carrie
bi-weekly.
could just let us know.
Yeah, okay.
And that was all in the contract that we approved
Right.
last month, the line
Right.
items on that. And I will say, Carrie and I had the conversation about some of the maintenance agreements were, I'm sure, fell to the axe of limiting expenditures and trying to watch every penny, and is it necessary or is it not necessary? So I think anytime we have that kind of pressure and try to skimp by, things like this will come up from time to time, and now we've got to get this thing back online.
Yeah, I mean,
Are there any
you're a
other
lot better off
maintenance
today than you were
agreements?
3 weeks ago, so it's kind of.
Yeah, we are a lot better. We do have an EMC that's been paid up, so the EMC maintenance agreement.
Yeah, and they're outlined in here too.
Right, but are there any other maintenance agreements where we need to watch the renewal dates carefully?
I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that question right now, man. I'm
Well,
not
that
sure.
would be good to know, so we don't end up finding ourselves in a comparable situation.
So back to, Steve had asked about technology plan too, and we do have a technology plan that's required by the state to do, that we submit, but it's more involved with Bob Cox and Tammy Hilby kind of coordinate it. And it's more educational, it's more about how we'll implement technology and how we'll engage students with technology. So there is a tech plan in terms of that, and then, like I said, Chad had his plans, and really our focus had been on getting more and more Chromebooks. And we've talked to the foundation about getting more and more Chromebooks and things like that. The
Right.
buildings have used their fundraisers for that, so.
So if we've always been planning on bring your own device or having Chromebooks, then just because a few kids are watching YouTube in the hallway, it shouldn't be.
Right,
a
and that's
big
what we're
problem.
saying, that we don't want it to be a problem to have YouTube and it's not, actually.
That's not the majority of the problem.
I was in a classroom today and they were using it, and so it's not crashing the system. It's just, we were trying to, as a stopgap, that when we crashed that one day, that last week ago, Monday, that was one of the things that we said, I think that's when it was, wasn't it, Jen? That's when we said, let's just stop the video streaming for now. And it wasn't just YouTube, it was all, we said, let's stop you streaming for now to see if that helps with our interference and the radios.
And
were
we've
what
had some
helped.
growth over the years, but we've been planning on that growth, so that should have been part of our plan, I would
Sure.
have thought.
Sure.
But you think too of what the difference is between what kids are using now and the devices they're bringing now and what it even was 3 years ago. I mean, there's first graders with iPhones and e-readers and such that didn't have them 3 years ago. So that increase is
Sure.
significant.
Yeah, that all adds to the bandwidth utilization or usage. And there's only so much, that pipe's only so big.
Will the tech committee be charged with developing this plan along with consultants?
Absolutely, yeah, and, because we really want to get their input about, there are times when they say, well, like if we would say, for example, let's just lock down some of the ways that kids can use their cell phones. Well, a teacher might say, no, I use it for, my students in my classroom use it for instructional purposes, so please don't do that. Please don't take away YouTube and passing hours, or whatever it might be, because we can make decisions thinking, oh, that will help this technology issue, that'll help the bandwidth issue, And then the kids, you know, the teachers might say, well, no, because I use that for this, or I use that website for this purpose. And they're typically pretty good about telling us, you know, well, I use Pinterest for educational purposes, perhaps. You know, they're typically pretty good about that, but we think it'll help as a whole group to have representation, and then their charge will be to communicate with their buildings about what their needs are too, and do we want something that's faster or more reliable or both, you know, those types of conversations. Some of this that Jack talked about, I think, will be important for them to hear and then help us take that next step as representatives of the folks that use it, so. The one thing we didn't do is put a parent on that committee. I just thought about that. I don't know.
That'd be a good idea.
If there's somebody,
I'm sure there's some out there.
yeah, that might have some interest and knowledge and background that, I just thought about that. If you guys think of somebody, let me know. 'Cause that would be, perhaps even a high school student.
Well, I have a question to ask you. Is there a sense of urgency on, well, what's the sense of urgency on developing this plan and having, you know, an implementation timeline? For our construction building, there's been, you know, the construction committee provides to the board very detailed schedules, what they plan, when they hope it will be accomplished, what they expect the bid to be, what it actually comes out. Is that, I mean, are we in a crisis situation that this plan should be developed within 3 months so that, you know, we can get this online, or do we have more of the luxury of time? On certain issues, it seems like, well, on a couple of the points you do say it's in crisis, like no backup.
Correct, yes. I mean, there are some items that
Accommodation.
needs pretty addressed pretty immediately. In terms of the time frame, we haven't put a time frame
Yeah, okay.
on that at this particular time.
Well, when you say something is in crisis mode, are you hoping to get it done within 5 weeks?
Well,
5 months?
So,
What?
so the exchange, the email wasn't working, so we immediately
Yeah,
fixed
right,
that.
okay.
And we brought in loaner routers to get you
Right,
up and going.
okay.
Wireless wasn't working, so we brought in loaner
Right.
radios to get, so I think we are taking pretty quick action.
What about the
to
no
address that.
backup on GHS and Chatham Elementary?
So that needs to be addressed, but those are budgetary items that we haven't got to yet to give to you to address.
Okay, so and that would be
The-
probably a determination by the tech committee whether they think that's
I would say that's correct statement.
high priority.
Yeah,
Okay.
the district's gonna have to prioritize for us. We can
Right.
present what's there, then the district will have to prioritize to us. The main priority was, you know, health, life, safety, we can't email, you know,
Right.
that's a health, life, fix it immediately.
Well, yeah.
Radios are down, we took loaners out of our own inventory, put them up on a tower on Sunday, high priority. So we have addressed what we could,
Right.
waiting for some additional approvals like tonight.
So next on our
and
list
Go from there.
Citrix
for
maintenance.
action is that Citrix maintenance agreement, which is the next step.
It is, yes, sir.
Here to improve our network.
To allow us to continue to do the assessments and move forward, yes.
And when we get that network assessment back, that will help that team too.
It will help that team
Because
take a
they
look at.
can look at it and
Yes.
say, you know, this makes sense, we want to do this, and
Right.
help us prioritize.
Correct.
This is gonna be an ongoing committee then.
I think it should.
Because technology's
and it-
not gonna go
Yeah,
away.
exactly.
It's just gonna keep
Yeah,
changing.
it
We're gonna be replacing
They may not-
technology and upgrading like we're replacing and
You become a
upgrading buses,
business.
so.
You really have
Right.
become a business. I mean,
Right.
you're a school district,
Right.
obviously, but you become a business. And that is the fact of life and
In this day and age.
yeah, I mean, in order to teach the students to be productive in the world, they have to have the technology, and in order to do that.
Yeah, because they're already using
You
it
gotta
before they get in
continue to
school.
invest. Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's how they want to
absolutely.
learn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
As they learn on the, sorry to interrupt, as they learn on the devices versus the books, that's how, you know, they'll learn in universities in the real world. Books are not, we all can see that, right? I mean, books aren't really something that we use anymore. We don't read books as books like we used to. We use them read them online.
I think for now, the committee might meet more often now, and then once things are more stable, we've got everything, resolved, then as far as infrastructure goes, then that committee can turn its attention to, like, what kinds of new devices do we need in the classrooms? What kinds of new, should we go with a different projector, or should we, those types of conversations, I think that committee can help make those decisions about what we're going to do in the classrooms as technology changes.
And as the state changes their edict, right? I mean, that all takes into consideration too. They come down with changes, you have to conform to the changes, and what does that mean to you?
And having said that, maybe it is important to get some students on this.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. Mr. Lee, do you think you could find a student, or?
Oh, that'd be easy to do.
Yeah, that'd be a good perspective to have too. Somebody who's,
Okay, so we'll get to the committees in a little bit
More
here.
than anybody on the committee.
they will. I'm certain of it. Yeah,
They can give you immediate feedback, because I get it
Good
at home
idea.
every night.
they will. They'll be like, you need to do this.
Okay, so this is an action item, so the recommended action is to authorize the renewal of the Citrix maintenance agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Jim. Betsy, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Nusis.
Yes.
Worley.
Yes.
Carter.
I recuse myself.
Cobb.
Yes.
Maddox.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes. All right, thank you all.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very
We
much.
appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk to you and the opportunity to work with you, so, thank
You have a
you.
business card?
I do.
Yeah, I want everybody's.
Thank you very much.
I'm not sure if anybody else wants one, but.
Anybody?
We'll get you. We'll find them.
All right.
We'll find you.
They'll be on the committee, so.
Great, thank you.
Well, now, before you leave,
Yes.
can you touch base with us? I put it on the agenda just so that they could talk about it. And I know this is a surprise to you because I didn't say anything. But last month, we talked a little bit about recruitment efforts. And so I wanted the board to be able to discuss recruitment efforts and again,
Stick
because
around if you want.
yeah, if you don't mind. They kicked it around a little bit last month and I just went ahead and put it back on their agenda for this month because we're finding that it's a big burden on Jen Barham. She's done an incredible job, and we said that last month too, that she's done a great job of helping direct, but she has a full-time position, with special education and student services. So, we want to start the ball rolling on some recruitment efforts, but we've just tabled it last month because we said, let's focus on the needs. So I put it on the agenda so the board can talk about it.
It's a discussion item, information.
I put it down as action if you wanted to take action, but
Could you explain what your recruitment is?
So we have a recruiting department within our corporate office in Downers Grove, and we have a number of options that we assist customers with. It can be where we assist you in seeking out a full-time replacement, and there's a fee associated with that. We can hire that person on our staff, and then you can pay a fee, say 3 to 6 months. If that person works out, then you can hire them from us. There's a different fee for that. So we have a lot of options to help you recruit folks, look really nationwide, if you will, for talent. It's not always easy to find talent that understands the big picture, and that's I think where you guys are now. What is the big picture, and how do you take that in-house moving forward at some point in time, and really get somebody to understand that and manage people, make sure those people are trained on an ongoing basis, because that's another big piece of it, right? Technology changes, you gotta keep up with your staff, talent, and, making sure that they understand all the needs of the district and how it incorporates from a projector to a whiteboard to a server to everything involved, video, all of it. So we can assist in finding that, and then how that actually gets implemented, we can discuss and give you, more detail on some options.
In your opinion, is the answer always a person? I mean, are there options out there where, say, you're configuring us, so you guys have the map. We have staff that can do labor work on it, but they call you and you diagnose it and say this is what needs to be done, or where your company's acting as the director.
That's kind of the mode we're in today.
Right.
In a short-term basis. We can take that longer term if you want. We as a company have what we call day 2 support, meaning, a ticket is opened in our day 2 support. They triage it and they fix it remotely if can. If not, we use your hands and feet to do whatever needs to be done locally. There are many, many options that we have to do that. Our biggest customer in this world is Chicago Public Schools. We have a 20-plus year relationship with them. They have over 600 buildings. We monitor, manage their entire network. There's about 100-plus people from Sentinel directly involved with them.
Okay, and so that's not an option that's actually on here.
No, no, it's not something that we discussed.
I figured we couldn't
Not-
afford it.
Well, you never know.
It's expensive.
Yes,
right?
it is. I mean, it is.
Like a retainer.
Right.
It is,
Yeah, like
you know,
something
the top
like what we're doing
level.
now. The hourly amount.
You do it, you don't do it like an annual contractual fee,
We do.
or do you,
Oh.
it's not?
We do it on the annual contractor fee. If that's what you want.
Like, just for grins, what would you throw out?
Well, first we gotta know how many devices you have.
Okay, so I know you gotta
Yeah,
assess it,
network
but-
assessment. We're not even sure what all you have.
Would you do
That's all
that?
right,
Could
you
you
do.
put together an inventory?
We're in the process of doing that.
Because that's exactly what I am wondering.
We're in
What
the
do we
process of
have?
They're doing that.
We're working on that right now. Doing a
That would be
assessment.
great.
Yeah, that's in the process.
Is that in the network assessment?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So will you include that in the report, please?
Yes, it is. It will be part of the documentation. We sidebarred there, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
No,
It's good.
Well, I guess where I'm going with it is, I would like to move to table this still, because I don't think we've.
And that's fine, yeah. I just wanted you to have an opportunity to talk about it.
I think once again, the tech committee could get a lot of that information and report back to us. Would have the time to ask all of those questions.
All right, so,
Thanks, Jack.
thank you, thank you very much. We'll table that, address it.
Now you can leave.
Another time.
Thank
Unless you
you.
want to stay.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening.
Thanks.
Thank you.
No, I didn't, yeah, you can be excused. That was nice.
So 8.4 is tabled, taking us to 8.5, board committees. So we did a little bit of homework on the board committees, and there are actually, according to board policy, 4 standing board committees. A policy committee, parent-teacher advisory committee, behavioral interventions, and finance. So those are the standing committees that are out there. And so there's not a standing technology committee. So in that instance, then we will establish an ad hoc committee, again, according to board policy for the consideration or investigation of special issues. So it certainly qualifies for that. So the standing committees, we have finance at the board level. Both Susan and myself are sitting on the finance committee. On construction, we currently have Jim Nuces and Steve Kopp. The policy committee, both Linda and Lisa have graciously volunteered for that. And then we've got a couple of volunteers for the technology committee, which is Brandon and also Jim Nuces. And the board representative at CACC, Steve, is serving on that as well. So I think it's important that we have a good mix of board members involved, across the spectrum of committees that we're dealing with, so that we all have, share the responsibilities, because it is a lot of work, but also to have each unique board member's perspective, presented in a variety of different forms that are out there.
Do we have someone on the student intervention? That's a committee I was.
I didn't know we had
Committee with
that.
that.
Yeah, and probably a good idea to put someone on.
Isn't that one you read off?
Yeah, Behavioral Interventions Committee. I don't know that the misconduct for students with disabilities. So would that help to have somebody, you've not had to necessarily revise policy lately, but if you would need someone, would it make sense for us to appoint a person?
That sounds
I
like
think
my.
that-
Yeah, that's perfect.
And it's the insurance, every year we've got the insurance committee.
Yeah, isn't
also.
there an insurance committee too? Was that?
Those are
mentioned?
ad hoc committees.
Yeah,
Those
I
are-
should have said that.
those are
Right.
not standing committees.
Okay.
I'm just reading right out of the board
Yeah, okay.
policy.
But you're right, we do have insurance reps, yeah.
And something to think about in the future is is there a need for a standing technology committee? You know, is that something that is becoming such a consuming portion of our time, budget, and importance to the learning environment of the district? Is that something that we need to talk about? So let's start with the ad hoc committee and go from there.
So when is the first technology committee meeting?
On Thursday,
What time?
3:45,
Where?
district office. We
Okay.
have not posted it as a board meeting though, so we'd only be able to have 2 board members.
Oh, why won't it be open?
I hadn't posted it. I guess I still have time
Yeah.
to post it. I saw it as an advisory to administration, but we can post it.
Well, no, we
Think
should
today's
post
Monday.
it
Yeah, we have
because
time.
construction's open, finance is open.
We have Joe post it. We don't post those either. We don't post the CACC meetings.
Yeah, we
so-
don't post CACC, we don't
So
post
not more than-
insurance.
You're all welcome.
Non-insurance, yeah.
So,
Yeah, but
I look at it.
technology is an important committee, that should be open. It really
They're
should
open to
be.
the public, but is it a board meeting? But that's okay.
Notice shall be.
If that's how you.
Let them read, so, okay. Okay. So the action would be to, you know, reconfirm or appoint the members to the committees that I just read off. So I need a motion to do that. Brandon, thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Betsy, please call the roll.
Yep. Worley?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Cup?
Yes.
Betts?
Yes.
Musis?
yes.
And Peterman?
Yes. 9.1, future board meeting dates. Upcoming board meeting dates for the board activities are listed. October 30th, board goal setting meeting with the IASB representative from 5 to 8 with Dean. November 3rd is building and SIP. November 24th, our regular meeting. December 15th, our regular meeting. And in addition, we should add October 20, is it the 30th?
Yes.
Thursday, 30th, is an additional meeting for the kickoff of the technology ad hoc.
So we postponed the facilities management report and the timing didn't work out. So when is that going to be? I think given the fact that we have so much, our campus is so big, I do think it merits a separate meeting date.
Had you talked to Dave about next month?
No, we have not talked to
Okay.
discuss that.
So, I mean, it doesn't have to be in November, but it probably should be before December 31st. Don't you think? It was originally scheduled for October.
We can talk
So
to Dave
let's-
about
yeah.
how much he has on
Okay.
that agenda.
Well, I don't think it should be postponed or combined with another meeting because there are lots of dollars involved in the management of our fixed assets. I think we have a responsibility to have a thorough and full meeting.
So let's get that on the future agenda
Yeah.
list.
But not combined with a regular
Right.
open meeting. And do we have any training IBB dates set up yet?
That's on the list here. That's your next item on this.
One question.
Okay.
Is it safe to assume November 3rd truly will be 6:30? The other two are ones we'll probably be here at 5:15, right?
Closed session, 5:15,
Okay.
November 24th and December 15th, I would assume.
Okay. And third is totally 6:30.
Standard agenda.
Yeah,
And
the
then-
regular meetings would have a closed session with them, but not the
And
November 3rd
Next,
or October 30th.
IBB training options, November 10th, 11th, 13th, and 18th at 5 PM. So is it one meeting or a number of meetings?
1 4-hour meeting. That's the training.
Right.
Did we? I thought we talked about that and we were trying to avoid training again, weren't we?
We did, but the BCA really wanted to go through.
So
They'll
are they
have new
changing their
members.
teams? Okay.
And we have one new member, but they have a couple new members, so.
So are any of those dates
Would you read those dates again, please?
November 10th, 11th, 13th, or 18th?
I think Bob Cox said for him personally, the 13th or 18th work for him.
Those work for me. 10th does not.
Let me double check that that's what he said. He just wrote me. He said the 13th or 18th for him, but I haven't heard from everybody else.
And we've all gone through it fairly recently and have some hands-on experience over the summer with the process. So if someone has been through the training and can't make the meeting, I think that would not be an issue.
So we know that the 10th does not work, right?
As long as we have a quorum.
I'm all pretty flexible in this.
There aren't any other dates that don't work for somebody?
I can't do the 13th, or I could, I'd just be late.
Okay. I'll ask the BCA and our administrative team if they have conflicts.
All right?
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
so moving on to communications 9.2, citizens, opportunity for visitors to address the school board concerning any topic. Anybody want to talk tonight?
Come on.
Well, good evening.
Hi, Dwayne.
I'm Dwayne. So at the last school board meeting on September 29th, I guess I saw an exchange that occurred, and it was covered in the Clarion. It sounded troubling, so I did a little bit of research about the topic, and it was on the technology. And I'm glad to hear Rick say tonight that you want to make good, informed decisions, because that's what I was coming to ask you to do. So, and then I heard the Sentinel folks talk tonight. A little bit of the research that I found, for your information as we move into this thing. In March and April of 2011, the Ball Chatham Tech Director at the time proposed and got board approval for a $1.5 million 5-year lease to buy virtual desktop equipment, VDI, for the district with the promise that it would work for 7 to 8 years. And I got that from a video, that would have been April 6, 2011 board meeting. He got board approval for $725,000 of the deal to be paid to AOS, which is a tech supplier. Again, that's in the video, and it's also still posted on board docs. I brought a copy in case you'd like to see it. As near as I can tell, AOS ultimately was paid approximately $1.1 million of the total, with the remainder paid to several other suppliers in smaller amounts. And that came from FOIA documents that were obtained from the district. Just as a little more background to help you make an informed decision, some of the quotes from that video I wrote down. These are direct quotes. For instance, installing thin clients will greatly simplify things, like if something breaks or if one of those should fail because of a power surge or something like that, it's a matter of just going and swapping it out. Other quotes, it's not going to be a storage issue, we've got plenty of storage. Another one, the nice thing about it is the data centers are scalable easily, so I mean we can just add more drives to this. Here's kind of a long one, but it says we had to make sure that our existing classroom technology that we invested, hundreds of thousands of dollars in over the last several years was going to work. And it does. It works great. Actually, it works better in some instances than it does on our PCs, which is what was replaced. The active boards, the document cameras, the active voters, the active slates, the smart boards, the turning point voters. And bear with me, I think that's what he said. I don't know what this equipment is. Literally, we tested every single hardware device we have out there. The troubling quote to me, and the reason I came tonight, was the one that said everything is warranted through 5 years. And actually on this VDI bid tab that I referenced earlier, it actually says on here, includes 5-year warranty, hardware and software, which to me is, I think that's everything. And then the last quote that I'll give you is, we've got no surprise costs in any of our server infrastructure or our thin clients or anything for 5 years. I'm not here to be a pain in your butt, Rick. I think you guys know that. But I guess I'm taking the guy at his word, and to do that, it just comes up with simple questions. If I was on the tech committee, I'd say, having heard that video, why are we now spending additional taxpayer money with the Sentinel group to try to fix it when we've got a 5-year warranty? Bear with me, it just seems like a simple question to me, and I'm not being smart alecky, because I have before. But more troubling is those promises were made and 5-year warranty, and we still have at least one more $300,000 plus payment to make. I think it was around $338,000 that's due next July on this equipment that's supposedly supposed to last 8 years. We're 3 years in, just starting our 4th year, still making payments, and now we're hiring a consultant to help us figure out why it doesn't work. That's just troubling to me as a businessman. So I guess what I'm asking is, why aren't we going after the people who put the equipment in, i.e. the warranty? Have we even asked? Did we really get what we paid for? And it sounds like Sentinel's going to give us a list of what's in the district, so that'll get answered. That was heartening. And tonight I wrote down, are we getting a second opinion? Because the last time we had one guy come in and tell us what was going to happen, and we just did it. We, meaning I mean the district. And tonight we're having one consultant come in and give us all their options. In my opinion, if I'm going to buy a car, I go to several different dealerships, and then I go back to them and tell them what the other guy said, and they tell me what he said wrong. That's kind of that's just how you do business in the world. But so that's it. I just wanted to throw some of that out there. It concerns me. When you talked about having parents carry on the technology committee, I'd actually recommend help put a half a dozen of them on there and make sure they have IT experience, because it sounds like Brandon and Jim know what they're talking about. There's a lot of professional people in this community that really know what they're talking about. Not me on IT. So please use the warranty. Thank you a million times over to the teachers and staff. I know this has been a pain. You can't believe the people that come up to me on the street and tell me what's going on in the school. So appreciate all your work in the district. So I know it's been tough, or that's what I'm hearing. So thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? So with that, I need a motion to adjourn our regular meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Brandon. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you, everyone.